चिंतन रिसर्च फाउंडेशन तथा इंडियन इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ पब्लिक एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन उत्तराखंड चैप्टर के सहयोग से आयोजित आज के इस विशेष कार्यक्रम विशेष परिचर्चा में हम लोग यहाँ पर एकत्रित हुए हैं और आज की इस परिचर्चा का विषय है भारत विश्व गुरु की राह पर। और इस कार्यक्रम में हमारे बीच में आज इस परिचर्चा में मौजूद हैं, कार्यक्रम की जो अध्यक्षता कर रहे हैं हमारे बीच में हमारे मुख्य सचिव उत्तराखंड शासन श्री आनंद बर्धन जी, उनका मैं सभी लोगों की ओर से हार्दिक अभिनंदन और स्वागत करता हूं। और साथ ही आज के हमारे इस परिचर्चा के कार्यक्रम में चर्चाकार के रूप में मौजूद श्री अमिताभ कांत जी, जो कि नीति आयोग के पूर्व CEO और G20 शेरपा हैं, उनका भी हार्दिक अभिनंदन और स्वागत। और साथ ही श्री राजीव खेर, जो कि भारत सरकार में पूर्व वाणिज्य सचिव व प्रतिस्पर्धा अपीलीट न्यायाधिकरण के सदस्य हैं, उनका भी हार्दिक अभिनंदन और स्वागत। और साथ ही श्री शंकर अग्रवाल, जो कि भारत सरकार में शहरी विकास विभाग के पूर्व सचिव रहे हैं, उनका भी हार्दिक अभिनंदन और स्वागत। और साथ ही आज के इस विशेष कार्यक्रम में जो मॉडरेटर के रूप में हैं श्री शिशिर प्रियदर्शी जी, विश्व व्यापार संगठन के पूर्व निदेशक और चिंतन रिसर्च फाउंडेशन के अध्यक्ष हैं, उनका भी हार्दिक अभिनंदन और स्वागत है। और अब मैं इन सभी अतिथिजनों का और हम इस सभागार में उपस्थित सभी प्रबुद्धजनों का स्वागत करते हुए आगे के कार्यक्रम के लिए मैं जो मंचासीन हमारे अतिथि हैं उनसे निवेदन करूंगा कि कृपया वे इस कार्यक्रम की शुरुआत दीप प्रज्वलन से करें और हमारे जो सहयोगी हैं यहाँ पर उनको मदद करें। धन्यवाद। धन्यवाद सभी माननीय अतिथियों का। अब आगे के क्रम में जो दून पुस्तकालय एवं शोध केंद्र के मानद निदेशक श्री N रविशंकर जी से मैं आज के जो हमारे अतिथि हैं उनका विस्तृत परिचय देने से पूर्व निवेदन करूंगा कि कृपया वे जो हमारे जो माननीय अतिथि हैं उनका पुष्प गुच्छ देकर स्वागत करेंगे। श्री N रविशंकर जी। धन्यवाद। अब मैं आगे की कार्रवाई के लिए मैं श्री एन रविशंकर जी, निदेशक दून पुस्तकालय एवं शोध केंद्र जी से अनुरोध करूँ। धन्यवाद।
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and dignitaries on the dais. It's my pleasure to briefly introduce the dignitaries on the dais. We all know Shri Anand Bardhan ji is the Chief Secretary of the Govt of Uttarakhand. I just want to mention that under his leadership, the state of Uttarakhand has the privilege of being ranked #1 in the implementation of sustainable development goals. Shri Amitabh Kant, as the former CEO of NITI Aayog for a period of almost 6 years, and after that as Sherpa of G20, brings a unique gravitas to whatever work he does. Brand positioning has been his forte, whether it has been God's own country or Incredible India or Make in India campaign. And he leaves a stamp on performance wherever he is. It's a privilege for you, for us all, to have you here, sir. Shri Rajeev Kher, former Union Commerce Secretary, who has had a fairly long stint as Joint Secretary, Additional Secretary and Secretary in the Commerce Ministry, understands world trade like an expert. I think in today's, what I would say, global situation, where world trade has got affected, he can perhaps give us an insight into what are the strengths and weaknesses of India and perhaps give a roadmap on the way ahead. Welcome, Shri Rajeev. Shri Shankar Agarwal, among officers whom I have known in the civil service, if someone had an entrepreneurial mind, I would say it is Shri Shankar Agarwal. And in every activity, he will say, how can we do and create more enterprises? So I think that sort of, I would say, commitment to creating activities beyond one's domain is his forte. And maybe he can, with his experience, add to the topic. Shri Shishir Priyadarshi has been a former district magistrate of Raah. I think that is the first qualification for this audience. He has been a Tosco, a Doon school boy, former district magistrate of Raah. So, as we say, our own boy. And then he, after a few years in the civil service, moved on to the World Trade Organization and specialized in world trade as in negotiation activities. Post his retirement, he is now President of Chintan Research Foundation, which is like a think tank. So welcome, Shri Shishir Priyadarshi. I have one important task to request of the Chief Secretary. Shri Amitabh Kant has penned a book called Smarter Than the Storm. It is all about the nexus of AI and climate change. I have had the privilege of reading the book and I find it extremely interesting. I would like the Chief Secretary to formally release it in this audience. All of you can come a little forward and then closer to one another. Thank you, sir. With my pleasant duties concluded for now, I would now hand over the proceedings to the moderator, Shri Shishir Priyadarshi to carry on from here. Over to you.
बहुत धन्यवाद रवि। आपके बाद मंच पे बोलना आसान काम नहीं है, but yet one shall try. But before I say anything else, it's also important for me to share with all of you how Ravi managed to get 4 of his batchmates onto stage. All of you know Ravi know very well that he's a person you can't say no to. I mean, एक बार अगर रवि जी कह रहे हैं और वो भी यहाँ के रवि उगने के बाद तो उनको मना करना संभव होता है। But विशेषकर जब उन्होंने ये बात उठाई, I think all of us probably did not hesitate for more than a second. Now, being a moderator in the presence of such wonderful people whose sum total of experience, and Ravi, I'm counting you there, is close to 200 years. So 200 वर्ष के अनुभव जिन व्यक्तियों के पास है, they don't need a moderator. But the moderator का सबसे अच्छी बात ये कि ये लोग सब बोल लेंगे, उसके बाद मैं आके जो इन्होंने ने कहा है उसको थोड़ा सा sum up कर दूंगा, and I'll feel, everyone will feel बड़े intelligent बातें कर रहे हैं, तो it will all be their talk. But in all seriousness, this is not an easy topic. उसका सबसे मूलभूत कारण ये है कि there will never be a clear definition of what we really intend to mean by Vishwaguru. कभी इसमें बहुत एकदम क्लैरिटी होगी नहीं, और एक डेफिनेशन भी एक ऐसी होगी जो हमेशा बदलती रहेगी. There was a time when global leaders in terms of countries were looked upon by their stature, their maturity. There's a time where global leadership is synonymous with loud voices. The louder you shout, it appears that is what global leadership is. Hopefully, by the time we come, global leadership will be determined by example, by what we will be doing, not what we will be preaching. Because all these years that we've been preached to, we've obviously not been happy about it. We've resisted. We don't like others telling us what's good for us. We certainly don't want to do exactly that when the time, hopefully, we are global leaders. And sometimes silence speaks more than words. So this is certainly not one of the easiest things to speak on, but you have an amazing panel of people. The advantage that you have from people, especially, and they're all my batchmates, is that when we joined service 1980, we've actually seen a lot of that transformation happening. And in fact, the people you see on stage have been authors of that transformation. In a very silent way, all of them have contributed immensely. And we certainly would like to hear from them. And I think no better person than to start than the Chief Secretary of this wonderful state where I've had the pleasure of both studying and serving, to give probably a perspective, because after all, the whole is made up as a sum of the parts. And every state will be as important a contributor to what India strives to be, but more importantly, how India would like to get there. So I would really request you, Mr. Bardhan, to kick the ball rolling or start the ball rolling by your thoughts and views on how you see this wonderful state of Uttarakhand contributing to India's journey to Vishwaguru. Sir.
Good evening, everyone. In fact, sir, we have come here to listen to you all rather than speaking, and especially amongst such a stellar group. And I think it will be better, without wasting time, we listen to you all, and because every one of us were eagerly waiting for this. But apart from this, at the outset, I would like to thank Shankar sir for organizing this event, and especially Doon Library and Research Center and Chintan Research Foundation and IITA Uttarakhand chapter for this event, and I would also like to extend my warm greetings to the distinguished panelists and moderators, sir, who bring with them, as rightly said, decades of experience in governance, policy and global engagement. And we will definitely be very enriched by their discussions and their throwing light on the topic, which is very relevant at this point of time. The concept of Vishwaguru is not merely a political slogan or a contemporary aspiration. It is deeply rooted in our civilizational ethos. For thousands of years, India has been a land where knowledge, philosophy, spirituality and human values flourished. And our sages and thinkers emphasized harmony, balance, sustainability and human dignity. The world looked to India not for domination but for guidance and wisdom. Therefore, when we speak for India becoming a Vishwaguru again, we are essentially speaking about reviving this timeless tradition of knowledge, ethics and leadership, combined with modern economic and technological strength. In this evolving world order, India has emerged as one of the most dynamic and promising nations. And several factors contribute to this transformation. Especially, India in today's time is one of the most fastest growing economies in the world. India possesses a demographic advantage. India's digital transformation story has been extraordinary, and India's voice in the global diplomacy has become stronger and more respected. India's leadership during global engagements in recent years has demonstrated the country's ability to build consensus and bridge divides. Especially in today's present crisis situation also, we are seeing that. And in the previous, when the world was affected by COVID pandemic, then also we saw the soft power of Indian diplomacy. Now, if India has to lead and become a Vishwaguru, not as a dominant power but as a guide, as a friend and philosopher, we need to strengthen our few foundation pillars: knowledge and education. Our institutions of higher learnings, they have to become global centers of excellence, research and innovation. Economic prosperity is essential for global influence. India's cultural richness remains one of its most powerful soft powers. Therefore, cultural diplomacy and heritage preservation are important components of India's global engagement. India is the world's largest democracy, and this strength of our democratic institutions, vibrant civil society, and participatory governance model enhances India's credibility globally. Last but not the least, the sustainable development of India and our development philosophy, which emphasizes balance between growth and environmental responsibility. And role of states, because India, which is Bharat, is a union of states, and India's journey towards Vishwaguru cannot be achieved by the union government alone. States play a critical role in shaping the country's developmental trajectory, and every state contributes through its own strengths, whether in industry, agriculture, tourism, innovation or culture. And in this context, Uttarakhand has a unique and significant role. Our state is not only a center of natural beauty, but also a spiritual heartland of India. The Himalayas and the Gangas have been for centuries a source of meditation, inspiration and knowledge. Uttarakhand hosts some of the most sacred pilgrimage sites and spiritual traditions that attract people from across the world. And the state's development approach combines economic progress and ecological sensitivity. Role of knowledge institutions and think tanks like CRF also becomes very important in shaping public discourse. And therefore such platform, like today's, it helps bridge the gap between policy, academia and society. Last but not the least, if India is truly to become a Vishwaguru, the role of the youth will be very, very decisive. And today, young Indians are confident, innovative and globally connected. They are excelling in technology, entrepreneurship, science, sports, art and public service. However, along with ambition must come values, responsibility and commitment to nation building. Therefore, the youth must combine modern knowledge with timeless wisdom of our civilization. This balance between modern knowledge, innovation and tradition will definitely define India's leadership in the world. Once again, I thank Shankar sir for bringing together all such stalwarts at one single platform, for enriching all of us, and thanking all of you sirs for giving your time and coming to Dehradun and participating in this event. Thank you once again. Thank you very much.
For perhaps setting the scene in a very broad way of what you feel are the absolutely essential, probably not sufficient, but definitely essential and necessary ingredients on that path. But I would like to really keep the ball rolling with this wonderful colleague of ours, Amitabh Kant, all of whom probably you know, have heard of or seen him speak. One thing that strikes out when you listen to what he's saying is that he's always thinking ahead. He's always thinking of what India needs to do, where India needs to get to. So he's not satisfied in the context of the present, but is continuously looking ahead. But he's been part of a very large number of transformations, and we'd be really delighted if he shared some of that vision with us. So those becomes instruments for the future. But one thing let me really share with those of you who may not know this. He was probably one of the most successful G20 Sherpa, not just for India, but for as a Sherpa across the countries, because at a time when there were such strong differences between the developed and the developing world, he yet ensured that there was a consensus document at the end of India's G20 presidency. So Amitabh, that and any other thoughts and experiences in the broad context of the topic, we'd love to hear from you. Over to you, sir.
So Shishir, let me first thank our batchmate Ravi for organizing this, getting all of us to Dehradun, and let me thank the Chief Secretary for giving us a very good perspective of what the role of the state should be in this journey. My view is that this topic about India being a Vishwaguru, it's not feasible for any country to be a Vishwaguru till you're not a developed country and you've not lifted vast segments of your population above the poverty line. So the Prime Minister has laid a road map for that. He says that we are a $4 trillion economy. We may be the fourth largest economy in the world. We may be the fastest growing economy in the world. But our per capita income is still very low, and therefore he says that by the time we become 100 in 2047, we should move from being a $4 trillion economy to a $30+ trillion economy. This means that your GDP has to grow 9x, your per capita income has to grow 8x, your manufacturing has to grow 16x. and which in reality means that the country should grow at rates of 8.5% to 9% per annum, year after year, year after year, year after year, for almost 3 decades. Now we must realize that very few countries in the world have been able to do this. Post-World War II, Japan did this, later Korea did this. In recent times, China has had a scorching pace of growth. Only 3 countries, 3 large countries. Almost 108 countries got caught in the middle income trap. So today there are 108 countries caught in the middle income trap. And therefore this would require a huge amount of administrative abilities, your ability to govern well. It will require a massive amount of political will. In the last few years, we've demonstrated that will. We moved from fragile 5 to the top 5 and to the top 4, and this was possible because we carried out massive structural reforms in the economy. Goods and services tax, one tax, we brought in insolvency and bankruptcy code, we brought in RERA, we focused on ease of doing business, we brought down the corporate tax rate. So those were structural reforms in the economy. But more than that, I think we fully, as the Chief Secretary mentioned, we made a digital leapfrogging. 1.5 billion people have a digital identity today in India. We do fast payment, credit, stock market transaction, insurance, all within 30 seconds to 1 minute on the mobile. And between 2015 and 2017, we opened 550 million bank accounts. At that point of time, only 18% of the women had a bank account. Today, 91% of the women in India have a bank account. So digital leapfrogging through a different method, which is open source, open API, globally interoperable, is a very, very different method from what the rest of the world, the western part of the world had done. We've done that. The third thing that has happened is we built a lot of infrastructure in the last 7-8 years. We've built more than 40 million houses for our citizens, which is more than the population of Australia. We've provided water connectivity to 253 million citizens, which is more than the population of Brazil. We've provided 130 million toilets to our citizens, which is more than the population of Germany, and electricity connection to 30 million Indians, which is more than the population of Canada. So huge amount of infrastructure. And fourthly, all this has been done when we've attempted to go green, to the point which Chief Secretary mentioned about sustainable development, which is very critical, on our will that India must be the first country to industrialize and urbanize through a process of decarbonization, and that net zero is net positive for India. And that is why we've been able to add over 260 gigawatt of energy. And the last point is that we've used technology to leapfrog. The AI mission, the quantum computing mission, the semiconductor mission, and the focus on green hydrogen all demonstrates that only technology, leapfrogging when you do and get into new areas of growth, you will be able to drive growth and you will bring prosperity to your citizens. But having said this, there are many challenges, many challenges for India, and I'll just list down 4 or 5. One is that if India is to grow at those rapid rates, you need manufacturing, which is around 16-17%, to become 25% of your GDP, and that would mean that exports will have to be a very key driver of growth. Rajeev is here, he'll talk about that at great length. Secondly, you need, to my mind, it's very, very important that you need at least 12 states of India, to grow at 10% plus. And the southern part of India has done this, the western part of India has done this, but you need now the eastern part of India to really grow at high rates for a 3-decade period. This is critical for India, and that would mean that you need to enhance your agriculture productivity in a very, very big way. And thirdly, for me, it will not be possible to do this. No country in the world has been able to do this without a huge improvement in Human Development Index and Physical Quality of Life Index. And that means learning outcomes to be improved, health outcomes to be improved. Our nutrition rates, our stunting and wasting is very high. There's huge amount of malnutrition, and therefore you need to make, again, use the power of artificial intelligence. These are slow-moving indicators which can be transformed now by the use of AI, and therefore how do you use technology to leapfrog in many, many ways in these areas. And those, to my mind, are critical challenges for India. So I'll rest it at that point now, and my view is that if any country can do this, I'm a great optimist on India, and if any country can do this, only India can do this. And India can do this because we are the only country in the world today. If any country can do this, India can do this because the demographics of India are very young. You know, our average age is just 28 and a half. Even when we become 100, average age will be 35. Japan is aging, America is aging, Europe is aging, India is very young. Rarely has a country not created wealth when it is young. And therefore, if you want to be a Viksit Bharat, then you need to grow with young people. And young people have to become the drivers of growth, their low dependency burden, and we need to make them the key drivers of our growth process. And I'm a great believer in India that this young generation can be really the big driver of growth for the future of India. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Amitabh. Thanks so much. I mean, there's so much passion in what you say and so much substance in what you share. But what I really also want to thank you for is literally opening, the setting for Rajeev to come in. You know, Rajeev's headed one of the most important ministries in the government, and that's the Ministry of Commerce. And there are 3 or 4 words that Amitabh you mentioned, which really lets Rajeev pick on it. You know, that economic growth will certainly, trade will play a large part in that economic growth if we have to reach from 4 trillion to 30 trillion. You've talked of manufacturing, Amitabh, you've talked of, how to get our exports level up. We also know that it's a really difficult time out there as far as global trade and global trade rules are concerned. You know, people use the cliche of throwing global trade rules out of the window. And literally, not just that, I think even the window has been thrown out along with it. So with that, Rajeev, we'd love to have your thoughts on how not only India can perhaps do more in that front, but including the challenges we face globally. Over to you, Rajeev.
Thank you, Shishir. Thank you very much. Let me start by thanking Ravi for getting us all here. Thank you so much for thinking about this and organizing it. And let me thank the Chief Secretary for initiating and giving a direction to this conversation. Amitabh has already laid the ground, so I don't want to go into most of those issues. Some I might have to allude to. Let me make a very sort of an initial observation, because Ravi has given a very challenging sort of a title to this conversation. It's important for me to give my perspective on what I believe Vishwaguru could be. I don't want to spend time on defining Vishwaguru. It's as a matter of fact, it's not defined anywhere. So we are all free to take whatever perspective we have on Vishwaguru. My perspective is that this is our vision, our dream, to reach a point in the evolution of this global community where people would take India much more seriously than what they do as far as the others in this community are concerned, where sagacity of advice, where wisdom, and where direction of the pathway for this evolution is laid out and learned. Let me also say that the word is very heavily loaded with politics, and or rather political aspiration. And political aspiration alone cannot lead you anywhere. Material prosperity is a quintessential of reaching a point where you could be considered as Vishwaguru. We have recently seen how if you are not materially prosperous and if you don't have capacities to leverage, then global community might speak very highly of you, but as a matter of fact, they may not choose you as the arbiter of global processes that are going around us. We have seen how an aberrant American president has treated India in the recent past in terms of tariffs. We have seen how our voice needs, despite all the intentions that we have, our voice needs greater clutches of prosperity, of the fact that we speak from a pedestal. So mere civilizational heft is not going to give us the kind of direction that we envisage for ourselves. So let that be very clear. Now Amitabh has very clearly laid out what we have done and what we need to do. First of all, there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that we have done a lot in the last several years. We have done significantly good amount of work in areas of technology, in areas of institutional processes and developments, in areas of envisioning how India should be progressing forward. But I think the area where I have drawn my experience from in the last some years is perhaps one area where India, unfortunately, has been walking in fits and starts, in jerks. Suddenly, one fine morning, you see India closing itself, becoming extremely protectionist, becoming very, very conservative, and then suddenly India goes out and says that it is on the bandwagon of liberalization, without really understanding as to what is the follow-up of that liberalization. But let me not sound as if I am being critical. Let me give you some examples and then I'll move forward. You know, for example, international trade is a rules dynamics. It's a process which is driven by global rules of order. For a very long time, in 1948, when the GATT, General Agreements on Trade and Tariff, was started, a rules-based order was structured. Then in 1994, the WTO succeeded GATT, and this order was further consolidated and concretized in the sense that GATT was a voluntary mechanism and WTO is a mandated mechanism. All those members of the WTO have to necessarily follow the rules which are enshrined, which are contained in the WTO. Unfortunately, right from the time WTO was created, the global political dynamics has changed very significantly. From post-World War, from moving from a sort of a unipolar world, we moved into from a bipolar world, we moved into the unipolar world, and now gradually we seem to be moving towards what we call a multi-alignment or a multipolar world. And this is a reality. A year ago, the American politics unfortunately trapped all of us into global political dynamics. And now today, trade perhaps is the most politically involved function in any government. Today, your trade openness, which is the welcome that you give to imports from other countries, is subject to a variety of treatment by different countries and on basis of several dimensions of political affiliations. There's not enough time for me to explain this, but let me bring up 3 or 4 points and then leave it at that. First of all, for a developing country, a trade architecture best suited for growth is a multilateral trade architecture, which means you follow a certain given set of rules and therefore life becomes easy for everyone. You know, your predictability is there, you know this is the rule and this is the tariff and this is the... this is how I have to move, these are the rules I have to follow, if I do this, then there will be consequences, and so on and so forth. Now, unfortunately, right from the time WTO came into existence, because WTO was based on a consensus-based mechanism where everyone has to agree to a certain decision, and because the political dynamics of the world has been changing from bipolarity to 89 and after that American dominance, and now the developing countries, particularly the emerging countries, playing a bigger role in international trade dynamics, has created a situation where there is rarely a possibility of a consensus-based decision making. Now, if India wants to be a Vishwaguru, then India needs to see how it can promote its objective of achieving those decisions even in an environment where a consensus is not possible. But unfortunately, and Shishir would bear me out, and that in the WTO, India takes a position which is absolutely contrarian to that. India seems to have frozen in time for the last 10 years. India continues to take positions where it needs to deviate, move away from those positions and move on. Consequently, as India would like to be called as leader of Global South, it is much less a leader of Global South in the area of trade as it used to be 10-15 years ago. Because now, nobody seems to be wanting India's leadership for several reasons. One of them is that our alignment with the certain dominant frame of political leadership, global political leadership, is very visible, very clear. Now there can be discourse, and I'm prepared for that, but I think I will leave it there. 2. As a consequence of WTO's going into a massive dysfunctionality, for a very long time, India shunned the idea of what is called regionalization of trade. Regionalization of trade means that you are not all the 166 members of WTO trading between yourselves, among yourselves, but some of you get together and create trade agreements, what you call FTAs. And again, India has been a very reluctant liberalizer right from the time it opened up. 91 was a compulsion. But thereafter, India's liberalization, India's opening up has been in fits and starts. So you had, for example, from 2014 to 2021, you had a time when India was extremely reserved, extremely reluctant to have a FTA. Now, what is the value of FTA? The value of FTA is that it gives you a scale. Today, India produces, whatever it produces for its domestic market, and the convention had, the mindset has been that if I produce more than what I consume, then I export it. But globally, over years, it has been proved that countries which have done well have necessarily exported. They have drawn their succor out of exports. And therefore, it is an accepted direction that India must export. In order to export, some sort of a preferential arrangements are necessary, because then you are not equated with your neighbor or your competitor. In order to become more competitive, you have to increase your productivity, your scale of production, because that is the only way in which you become more competitive. Therefore, you have FTAs, because the market becomes larger. And when market becomes larger, a pen which you used to produce for 10 rupees would now be possible to produce for 8 rupees, because there is a larger number of people who are buying it. Now, Bangladesh has taken advantage of this in the garment sector, but India could not. Because for a certain reason of political economy, India's textiles could not naturally be converted into ready-made garments in India, because there was a certain price which a certain company wanted out of its yarn. And therefore, we could not have competitive garment manufacturing in India. So the point I am trying to make is we need to scale up. We need to change our reluctance to opening up. We don't have to be shy about it. Because India is competitive in a whole lot of areas, and if productivity improves, there is a tremendous possibility ahead. A country with $4 trillion of GDP is exporting only 1.6% of the global exports. So you can imagine the kind of potential that we have. Imports is an essential part of trade, because when you import raw material, you import intermediate products, which you then manufacture, you make them into finished products, and that is what you export. So if you don't import, then you will not be able to export competitively. So the first several years, the government wasted in all this. Now, you have suddenly, over the 3 years, you have 7 FTAs which the government has signed. Excellently great job. Particularly the one which is latest is the European Union's FTA. European Union, as you know, is a large market. It's technologically advanced. It has a huge investment potential in India. And therefore, this FTA is perhaps going to be a sheet anchor of all that we do. But please remember, when you associate yourself with a higher market, there are a whole lot of areas which are called non-tariff measures. Which means it is not just the customs duty which determines your market access into the other market. It is also the non-customs duty related areas. For example, the quality of the product. Now, Prime Minister for the last 10 years, 11 years, 2017, so 9 years, has been talking about that India should be making zero defect products. But unfortunately, that great idea has to be absorbed by the people who manufacture. Because if you want to export to EU, if you want to export to US, you have to manufacture at a level of quality and standards which nobody else does. So that is the second challenge. The third challenge that we are going to face is the question of sustainability. You know, we have done phenomenally well in areas of climate commitments. Many of you must be aware of the Paris Agreement and the commitments that we have given for the voluntary control of emissions, carbon emissions. But yet, when it comes to articulating them in trade, we suddenly develop cold feet. And therefore, this whole aspect of trade and sustainability is something on which India has been moving very reluctantly. Now, getting an agreement with EU doesn't mean that you have achieved climbed the peak. It is now that your problems will actually start. Because EU will like these sustainability dimensions to be adopted by India, then only India will get market access into EU. So, non-tariff areas are very important. Investments are something which are extremely important, and Amitabh has spoken about it, so I don't want to get into this, but it is important to know that investments made for the sake of getting Indian market is not what we want, not just what we want. We also want investments for exporting to the world. And that can happen only when the value chain leaderships, because today all manufacturing happens, about 70 to 80% manufacturing happens in value chains. And value chains are led by large brands, large companies. You have seen how one company like Apple has completely transformed the mobile phone manufacturing in India. $28 billion worth of exports in 4 years. Within 4 years. So clearly, we have seen how the benefits of globalization can percolate. What it would mean is that it will build pressures on some areas where we are vulnerable. For example, agriculture. It could be dairy, it could be several others. But that is where the reform process needs to come in. So our big challenge is that while we do all this, we cannot sit idle, but we will have to continue to reform some of those sectors where we feel the challenge, the heat will come. I'll stop at that. Thank you.
You know, this is the toughest part of a moderator. You've got these phenomenal, the amount of experience and the wealth of knowledge that these people possess But yes, we also have to, in some ways, respect whatever Ravi has given us as the overall conditionalities of time. But really, Rajeev, thanks hugely for two things. Hugely for two things, because इन्होंने मेरी तो कम से कम दुखती रग पे हाथ रखा है, क्योंकि जो 25 साल में WTO में रहा, and invariably the one question you would be asked at, sometimes even non-verbally, sometimes only by the raising of a left eyebrow of the Director General, why is India taking such a position? And trust me, there are instances in which there was a huge dichotomy between what we are doing internally and what, as again Rajeev said, the 10 years hibernation that seems to have started. So, but overall, what I would really like to thank Rajeev is to bringing out the complexity of the whole gamut of global trade. It's not just internal manufacturing, your systems, reforms, structural, otherwise, finance, availability, otherwise, but even the global scenario. And trust me, when you may feel that the opening of markets with every FTA, it's also true that your own market is also opening up. It's they also see you. They're also signing an FTA because they see this 1.4 billion market. So thanks a ton, and I'm sure. Before I go on to this colleague of mine on the left, whose experience in urban development, amongst other things, labor, has been phenomenal. There are two things I'll probably mention before giving the floor to Shankar. One is the fact is that, look, cities will certainly constitute the hub, or a very, very important hub, or whatever growth and urbanization and industrialization and growth we do. And we will certainly need to have some very, very concrete policy measures there. And perhaps he's a great guy to say that. But second, certainly. But second, we must also get insights from him as an entrepreneur. Because finally, it's the country, then the states, but it's the individual which will grow wealth. So, Shankar, with those words, happily there. After which I'll be opening the floor. So really, do think whatever you may wish to quiz these wonderfully esteemed gentlemen. And moderators are not quizzed, it's only the panelists.
Thank you very much, Vijay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Honorable Chief Secretary, Mr. Anand Bardhan ji, and my very dear friend, Mr. Ravi Shankar. It is only because of Ravi Shankar ji we are here today. और रवि शंकर और हमने बहुत जगह साथ साथ काम किया in many ministries, department, and it was always a wonderful and very pleasant experience. Now coming to this topic of भारत विश्व गुरु की राह पर, मुझे नहीं मालूम कि हम किस राह पर हैं, but let us look a little back and find out where we started and where are we today. At the time of independence, the biggest challenge before us was the kind of governance which we had to select, which we had to choose. And I'm very happy that at that point of time, we selected an institution called democracy. And democracy works only in those societies which are more prosperous and more literate. India was neither literate and not prosperous. But today, we are not only the largest democracy of the world, we are one of the most thriving and vibrant democracy of the world. We change our government without any hassle, without any issue, without any violence. That's a huge plus, and we give credit to every citizen of this country. The second challenge before us at the time of independence, and that continues till now, was the security of the nation. And as you know, we have got very volatile neighbor, China, Pakistan, and we had a little bit of problem in the beginning in 1948 and thereafter in 1962. Thereafter we pulled up our socks, and today we are not only truly a very powerful country, but no country or nowhere in the world there can be a discussion on the defense without consulting us. And that is what we are saying, that Vishwaguru ki Raah. It is not that we have become some kind of a guru, but certainly we have created an example which people are able and people can follow. Thereafter, the next problem was scarcity of food. And many of you would be knowing that we used to stand in long queues to get a little bit of ration under PL 480. we were importing large quantities of food grain. Today, we are net exporter of food grain, and we are absolutely sufficient, self-sufficient in terms of food grains and all other food commodities. We are the largest producer of milk and fruits and vegetables in the world. We are one of the largest producers of rice and wheat in the world. And we are exporting, and that credit goes to our farmers and scientists. And the next problem was economic development. And again, you would be knowing that we were growing at a rate of 2.5%, 3.5%. And we used to call it Hindu rate of growth. And then we started growing 4%, 5%, 6%, 6.5%, 7%, 8%, 9%, 9.5%. Even today, we are the fastest growing major economy of the world. And again, that credit goes to our policy makers, our economists, and our entrepreneurs because of that, and the citizens. Thereafter, in the science and technology, as Amitabh said, आप पूरी दुनिया में कहीं नजर डालेंगे, और जैसे अभी अमिताभ ने 3 कंट्रीज का नाम दिया, इसे जापान, कोरिया, and third country, China. No. All these 3 countries have become developed countries primarily because of technology. आप जो कुछ करना चाहें करें, लेकिन unless you are able to harness technology, we will not be able to move forward. Whatever we do. आप देखेंगे पुराने ज़माने जब आग को आविष्कार किया, उसके बाद हम लोग आगे बढ़े, चक्र का क्या, व्हील का क्या, जो भी हमने जब भी किया, कोई जब भी बड़ा साइंटिफिक अचीवमेंट अचीव किया, तभी सोसाइटी आगे बढ़ी. And we have done wonderfully well in terms of science and technology, whether it is space, our mission, whether it is atomic mission or any other mission. We are supposed to be the world leader in IT. And even in artificial intelligence, we may not be doing the basic research, but yes, we have got a very large pool of young boys and girls who can harness artificial intelligence for the benefit of billions of people over here. Now, in spite of all these beautiful achievements, we can be very proud of our achievements. And we have become the darling of the world, and we are still the darling of the world. But if we look a little deeper, we have got huge challenges as well. In spite of this economic growth of 8%, 9% of the fastest growing economy, still large number of people are very, very poor. They do not have access to good quality education. We do not have good quality access to good quality health services. अभी भी हम लोग जब बीमार रहते हैं सबसे पहले सोचते हैं कौन सा डॉक्टर मुझे जानता है, तो हम उसको फ़ोन करते हैं जिससे कि वी डोंट हैव टू पे मनी. अगर IAS ऑफिसर ऐसा सोच सकते हैं तो आप सोचिए कि जो गांव में बेचारा रहने वाला है, what can he do or she do? Similarly, if you look the quality of even water supply, भी आपने देखा होगा इंदौर में so many people died. हम 75 साल हो गए आज़ादी के, and we have not been able to set it right, and that is a part of municipal governance. Every now and then you'll find कि किसी building में आग लगी, गोवा में आग लगी, so many people died. All these show that yes, in spite of all these achievements, there are a lot of shortcomings. And my personal assessment is that unless we are willing to do 3-4 things, we will not be able to reach where we can be. First and the foremost is education and skill. We take pride again कि हर गांव में हम लोगों ने स्कूल लगा दिया है, ब्लैक बोर्ड भी है, वहाँ पे टीचर भी है, but you will look into the quality of education is appalling. मैं अपना एग्जाम्पल देता हूँ. जब हम क्लास 12 में थे तो हम कैलकुलस भी रट के पूरा रट लेते थे, और एग्जाम में जो आता था वो सवाल लिख देते थे, नंबर अच्छा आते थे. बट फैक्ट ऑफ द मैटर इज दैट वी कुड नॉट अंडरस्टैंड कि इसके नुआंसेस क्या थे, फिजिकल सिग्निफिकेंस उसका क्या था. एंड अनलेस वी इम्प्रूव द क्वालिटी ऑफ एजुकेशन, हम बात करते हैं कि बहुत ज़्यादा डेमोग्राफिक डिविडेंड हमारे पास है, वी विल नॉट बी एबल टू हार्नेस दैट डिविडेंड अनलेस वी impart good quality education. And in that, AI can play a very, very important role. Second is health services. Again, appalling. I do not know about southern states. Southern states have done wonderfully well. But if you go to Uttar Pradesh or maybe Uttarakhand also, extremely poor. और बहुत सारे लोग गरीबी देखा के अंदर इसीलिए जाते हैं because they have to spend lot of money, they have to sell their land, they have to sell their assets to get any meaningful health services. We have to improve, and we can again improve. Again, with the help of technology, the cost can be reduced to a very, very low level, and it can be made available to people sitting in their houses and villages. And then looking into what are the problems now. The first and the foremost is that it's जैसे अभी अमिताभ ने बताया कि हमारी GDP बढ़ गई, सब कुछ बढ़ गया, लेकिन अगर आप पर कैपिटा इनकम देखेंगे स्टिल वेरी पुअर। यस्टरडे हम लोग डिनर पे यही बात डिस्कस कर रहे थे कि बहुत सारे लोगों के पास कारें आ गई हैं, स्कूटर्स आ गए हैं, मोटरसाइकिल आ गई हैं, कुछ घर भी बढ़ गए हैं। पर आप ये देखें कि आज से 10 साल पहले जिस डोमेस्टिक हेल्प को या जिस ड्राइवर को हम लोग 15-1,000 रुपये देते थे, आज उसको मुश्किल के दिनों में 22,000-23,000 रुपये डाल देगा। और 10-12 साल में थिंग्स हैव गॉन अप सो हाई, जिसके पास और हम लोगों की जैसे कि बहुत सारे लोगों की जो वेजेस एंड सैलरीज एंड इनकम है, इट हैज मल्टीप्लाइड वेरी टाइम। दैट इज समथिंग रॉन्ग एंड इट हैज गिवन अ प्रॉब्लम ऑफ इनइक्वालिटी। इंडिया में जितनी इनइक्वालिटी है पूरी दुनिया में कहीं नहीं इतनी इनइक्वालिटी, एंड दैट इज द फर्स्ट एंड द फोरमोस्ट प्रॉब्लम। एंड द सेकेंड प्रॉब्लम एजुकेशन के बाद, हेल्थ के बाद एंड पॉवर्टी के बाद, हाउ डू वी लिव इन विलेजेस इन सिटीज एंड टाउन्स। हम बार बार पूछते रहते हैं कि लोग बाग गाँव से छोटे शहरों से बड़े शहर में हैं। माइग्रेशन इज अ नेचुरल प्रोसेस। आप पिछले 5,000 साल, 10,000 साल, 20,000 साल पहले, उससे भी पहले देखेंगे, वी माइग्रेटेड फ्रॉम अफ्रीका टू इंडिया एंड millions of parts. From smaller areas we came to bigger areas, bigger towns, and इसको ना तुम चेक कर पाएंगे and not desirable. Rather it is an indication of progress. Idea is कि जब हमको मालूम है कि इतने सारे लोग हमारे शहरों में आएंगे, हम अपने शहरों की व्यवस्था कैसे करें। Unfortunately, in this particular area, जबकि मैं इस particular area में बहुत सालों से जुड़ा रहा हूँ, unfortunately we have not done very much and not very good thing about it. और बहुत मुश्किल काम है, इट्स नॉट अ रॉकेट साइंस। हमको मालूम है कि इतने सालों में इतने लोग आएंगे, उनको इतने जगह रहने की चाहिए होगी, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर चाहिए होगा, फिजिकल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर चाहिए होगा, गुड सैनिटेशन चाहिए होगा, गुड क्वालिटी ऑफ वाटर सप्लाई, इलेक्ट्रिक सप्लाई चाहिए होगा। ऑल दीज थिंग्स कैन बी डन। लेकिन हमने क्या किया, धीरे धीरे थोड़े पॉकेट ऑफ एक्सेलेंस बना लिए कॉमन पर्सन के लिए, कॉमन मैन एंड वुमेन के लिए। वी आर नॉट डन मच। आई वुड से दैट लेट अस सिट टुगेदर, लेट्स ट्राई, let's pick up our brains, and we can certainly create models, and maybe those models can be given to the entire world for adoption. At one point of time we were the best in terms of urban planning. Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, Indus Valley civilization, हमारे से ज़्यादा कोई अच्छी टाउन प्लानिंग नहीं थी, and today if you look into our town planning, it's appalling. So I would stop here, Shishir. But I would again request that let us look into the basics, and all other things will fall in line. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Shankar. As I promised, before we kind of either have another short round of questions or before we conclude, I'd love to open the floor. Aap logon ka koi, it doesn't necessarily have to be a sir, it doesn't necessarily have to be a question. A comment was also absolutely welcome. Do introduce yourself. Keep it short if possible. We'll take about 3 comments or questions to begin with, and then perhaps come back. Brilliant, sir. Someone will have to help us there. To the extent possible, we'll do a gender balance. So a gentleman followed by a lady.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I was trying to see you, but they didn't remove the.
नहीं सब आपको सुन रहे हैं।
जी, the last speaker, Mr. Shankar Agarwal, spoke about town planning and managing our cities and so on. Incidentally, my name is Harry Sethi, and I am from the 71 batch of Indian Economic Service. I have been a professor of economics at the Lal Bahadur Shastri Academy for 6 years. When I was posted there, I bought a house in Dehradun, thinking that after retirement I will live in a nice, quiet, peaceful city. House I got. The loan at that time was only about 2.5 lakhs from the government. I had to borrow from other sources to meet the cost. Finally, when I started living here, things have been worsening. And you talked about managing, Bharat comprises of villages and cities. We are sitting in a city named Doon. The way it is expanding, the way bars and restaurants have come up in my neighborhood next to my house. And there are agencies who approve the construction of such buildings. Are they not working? It seems they are not working at all. So my first question is, when we talk of Bharat, let's first talk about our own home, our cities, our villages. Then only this will become...
Bharat will come.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Raturi here, and after that we'll move slightly behind.
नमस्कार, मेरा नाम अनिल रतूड़ी है। मैं भारतीय पुलिस सेवा का सेवानिवृत्त अधिकारी हूँ। बहुत विद्वान लोगों की बात सुनी। मेरे मस्तिष्क में कुछ बातें आई जो मैं कहना चाहूँगा और फिर प्रश्न पे आना चाहूँगा। समय कम है। विश्व गुरु की राह। Now, as I understand, I'm a very ordinary man. You people on this dais are obviously experts in the particular topic that we've been discussing this afternoon. The guru per se would imply that it's like the guru doesn't declare that he is the guru. It's an organic evolutionary process whereby perhaps because of the intrinsic knowledge of that guru, the people they become disciples. They want to learn from something from that. And in that sense, perhaps if the idea of Vishwaguru ki Raah par India has this objective that, or rather this notion that we are Vishwagurus and we want to be Vishwagurus, perhaps we do have a very ancient tradition where our distilled wisdom, which perhaps because we got disenfranchised in terms of our knowledge of Sanskrit and the present generation through the last few centuries now, we got sort of cut off from our knowledge. And अगर जो हम कहते हैं कि जीरो है नंबर जिसको आज अरबिक नंबर्स कहते हैं या जितनी भी हमारी जो साइंटिफिक डिस्कवरीज थी पहले मैथमेटिकल, we are in a way trying to reclaim that heritage. That is one part, which people in the West are completely ignorant about. So one, I would say, angst is this. The second part, which I think very properly, appropriately, Amitabh साहब ने कहा कि हमारी इकोनॉमी फोर्थ पे जो जा सकती पर कैपिटा, अभी हमारे significant portion of people are below the poverty line. Now, as they say, nothing succeeds like success, and success ultimately is through two things in the present Kali-yuga. One, through the material wealth, and two, the power that you have, geopolitical or military power, which actually emanates from your industrial and wealth itself. Now, India obviously is now at a trajectory. Fortunately, we are at a very good position in terms of since independence. This perhaps in the last few maybe a decade and a half or maybe 2 decades, we have now moved towards the trajectory where for the first time things seem to be going in the right direction in terms of us being able to realize the potential that actually we have, which for some various reasons we couldn't put our act together for so many decades. Now, there is one more thing the question which I will pose to all of you is that we post Second World War, obviously all of us didn't, we were not born exactly after 45, but beyond that, till maybe the last 3-4 years, 5 years maybe, we have seen, perhaps the human race has seen one of the most peaceful times in human history, despite whatever wars there might have been. And whatever semblance behind the hypocritical interests of various countries might be, there was some world order in terms of at least the semblance. Now, for the first time, we see disruption coming in a way which we don't know how things will now go from here in the next 5 to 10 years. I'm coming to the point, sir. Just give me a minute. China developed with about 10 to 12% GDP at a time when that world order was very quiet, and as things have been said, you keep your head down. and you quietly rise. And perhaps one of the mistakes Xi Jinping made was that he started flexing his muscles too early. Now, for India to declare that we want to be Vishwaguru, in that sense, I don't know how far that would be appropriate. We need to quietly first get our act together and remove the poverty, increase the per capita income of our people through whatever health, nutrition, education, whatever human resource. So in this present context, this disruption which is happening now, do you think what China as a totalitarian regime could do as a democracy as it is, we were very complex. With this worldwide disruption, which is going to be perhaps the thing now,
sure,
will we be able to do that?
Sure. Thank you. Yes, sir, the lady on your left, sir.
Myself, Dr. Asha Lal. I am a social activist and chairperson Women's Cell All India Freedom Fighters Samiti. मेरा सर एक प्रश्न तो अमिताभ कांत जी के लिए है कि इकोनॉमिक क्षेत्र में विश्व गुरु बनने के लिए ऐसे कौन से 3 प्रमुख आर्थिक सुधार जरूरी हैं? और दूसरा प्रश्न हमारी मुख्य सचिव जी के लिए है, राज्य स्तर पर सुशासन और नीतिगत सुधार भारत को विश्व गुरु बनाने में किस तरह से मदद कर सकते हैं? और एक प्रश्न और है मेरा सर, विश्व गुरु क्या एक ये यथार्थवादी सत्य है या फिर ये सिर्फ एक विचारधारा है? और अगर हम भारत को विश्व गुरु की राह पर ये इस्तेमाल करते हैं तो क्या भारत वास्तव में विश्व गुरु बन रहा है? तो इसके पीछे क्या मापदंड होने चाहिए? ये मेरा प्रश्न है। थैंक यू।
बहुत धन्यवाद। मैं बस 2 और लूंगा सर, नहीं तो हमारे पैनलिस्ट प्रश्न ही भूल जाएंगे। एक बिल्कुल पीछे सर, सफेद टोपी जिनके पास है, एब्सोल्युटली, and then one more on this side, and then I give back.
Thank you. My name is Ramana. Brief background, I'm an engineer by training. I spent my childhood in Zambia in the late 60s and 70s. We used to get potable water inside the house and outside the house. Roads once built lasted for 5 years with zero maintenance. If electricity or water was going to be disrupted, we'd get written notice 24 hours in advance. In a time and age when there were no mobile phones or internet. Today we have everything, but yet we do not get any intimation. Now leave aside Vishwaguru at a global level. Let's talk about a micro level. When will India have walkable streets where we are all pedestrians at one point or a time or the other, can walk safely, seamlessly and comfortably? Question to Mr. Anand Bardhan. When was the last time you walked from here to your office at the Secretariat without fear in your mind about crossing the road or walking on a usable footpath? 3. Sasudara Road, the widening has started 3.5 years back. Till date it's not completed. Who is responsible for this? Mr. Bardhan, probably since you're a resident of Dehradun, would you care to answer this question?
Okay.
And it was supposed to be one of the model streets. It's in a complete mess today. And I live on that road. That's why I'm asking you this question.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, sir. Gentleman here. And the gentleman, apologies sir, we'll have to then come back. We'll do it once the gentleman whose hand is raised and the gentleman with the hat, easier for me to say.
Sir, I just want to ask about the industrial plateauing of growth. We have done a lot of in PLI scheme, right? First it was given in electronics, then core manufacturing, batteries. Then again, every time when then the economic survey comes, again it is plateaued, again it is plateaued. What is happening? It's only 16.5 or 15.5. Then again, I like to say about digital leapfrogging. Actually, 66% of Indian population is digitally illiterate. Right, and recent what happened in Rajasthan, we were implementing a scheme, PMKSY, and that what happened, there were a lot of intermediaries based and they were creating proxy accounts. So what is the solution for this? Second, I like to ask about semiconductors, especially to Amitabh Kant sir. In semiconductor, why it's only a summertime issue, right? Every time June and July we are announcing the scheme, and then in December we are stagnant. In this year also four offices were announced, and then and earlier also semiconductor mission was so there is a growth, but there is only that kind of no IPR is there, only manufacturing assembly based, and that's also the last stage of assembly, not the core VLSI which is semiconductor. Thank you, sir.
सबसे पहले तो बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद आप लोगों का जो आपने इतनी अच्छी बात आज हम सबके सामने रखी। मेरा नाम जयराज है, मैं फॉर्मर हेड ऑफ फॉरेस्ट डिपार्टमेंट हूँ उत्तराखंड का। मेरा सब प्रश्न एक तो ये है कि हम विश्व के गुरु बनने की क्यों बात कर रहे हैं। पहले हम आम आदमी की नज़रों में हम पहले गुरु तो बन जाएं। नेशनल लेवल पे तो पहले हमारा हर सिटीजन ये कहे, मैं और आप नहीं, हम लोग तो सिखाए भी जा सकते हैं, खासतौर से ब्यूरोक्रेट। ठीक है, आप में तो बड़ा डिसेंट मैंने देखा सरकार के उस पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से, वरना ब्यूरोक्रेट का काम है कि नेताओं की वाहवाह करनी, रूलिंग गवर्नमेंट की वाहवाह करनी। एक आम आदमी अगर ये कहे साहब वाह क्या देश है मेरा, तब आगे बढ़ने की बात है, जहां तक विश्व की बात है गुरु बनने की। पहली बात सर। दूसरी बात साहब, इंडिया का ट्रेडिशन आप देखिए, राइट फ्रॉम नेहरू टाइम, लाल बहादुर शास्त्री जी, इवन इंदिरा गांधी, हम लोग सही को सही कहते थे। भले ही हम अमेरिका से कुछ भी इंपोर्ट करते थे, PL 480 व्हाटएवर, बट यू यूज्ड टू स्टैंड विद आवर ट्रेडिशंस। हमारे ट्रेडिशंस है राइट को राइट कहना। आज आप हालात देख लीजिए, इसी वॉर का हाल देख लीजिए, हमारे ईरान में इतनी लड़कियां मरी, हमने कोई कहा किसी ने बढ़ करके कि साहब क्या हो रहा है ये सब, क्यों उन बच्चों को मारा गया, हेड ऑफ द स्टेट मारा गया, हम कुछ बोले? हाँ जरूर शोक व्यक्त करने हमारे हो सकता है फॉरेन मिनिस्टर चले गए हों वो, बट ये क्या हो गया हम लोगों को, और क्या आज दबाई हो रही है, और हम बैठे हैं ऑब्जर्विंग द सिचुएशन, इंडिया सब पे नजर रखे हुए। ये विश्व गुरु के लक्षण नहीं है, सही को सही तो कहना पड़ेगा अगर हम इस तरह की बात कर रहे हैं। थैंक यू वेरी मच।
देखिए प्रश्न बहुत होंगे, लेकिन ये सभी लोग आपको बाहर चाय पे भी मिलेंगे, तो इनके साथ आप वार्ता जरूर करिएगा। What I'm going to do is I'm going to give the floor in the reverse order to what the people spoke, and would request the panelists maybe about 2 or 3 minutes each to answer whatever they feel may be the most important points that have been raised specifically to them. So let me give the floor to Shankar.
Thank you, Shishir. जो लास्ट में आपने कहा, I entirely agree with you. जब तक हम अन्याय और जब तक हमको ये लगता है कि कोई चीज़ गलत हो रही है उसके विरुद्ध आवाज़ नहीं उठाएंगे, नथिंग विल हैपन। एंड जो उसके लिए सबसे ज़रूरी है कि हम अपने बच्चों को, यंग बॉयज़ एंड गर्ल्स को गुड क्वालिटी एजुकेशन दें। जब एजुकेशन देते हो तो एजुकेशन ये नहीं कि उनको लिखना पढ़ना आ जाएगा, उनमें एक आत्मसम्मान और एक कॉन्फिडेंस जो आता है कि चाहे कम व्हाट मे, आई कैन रेज माई वॉइस एंड आई कैन से व्हाट आई फील लाइक, रादर देन आई एम बीइंग ट्यूटर्ड कि मेरे को ये कहना मैं क्या रुकी बात तो आई एंटायरली। सेकेंडली हमको ना एक हमारा जो सोच है ना बहुत, जिसको बोलते हैं इंक्रीमेंटल हो गया, थोड़ा सोचते हैं, थोड़ा बहुत टू थिंक बिग। जब तक हम बड़ी चीज़ नहीं सोचेंगे और बड़ी चीज़ के लिए प्रयास नहीं करेंगे और तब तक प्रयास नहीं करते रहेंगे जब तक वो चीज़ अचीव नहीं करेंगे, अगेन वी विल बी मिसिंग। हमने एक जैसा भी बात मैं कह रहा था कि AI उसमें IT में वी डिड वेरी वेल, लेकिन AI में हम अगेन फिर गए अगेन, क्योंकि हमने उस समय ये नहीं सोचा कि हम बेसिक रिसर्च के ऊपर कुछ डालें। लेकिन अभी भी समय है, अगर हम AI को हार्नेस करें और उसे एप्लीकेशन बनाएं और रोज़मर्रे की ज़िंदगी में, चाहे वो स्ट्रीट रोड हो, चाहे प्लानिंग हो, चाहे लाइटनिंग हो, व्हाटएवर इट इज, दीज कैन बी सेट राइट इजीली विदाउट मच ऑफ हैसल। एक बिल चाहिए, एक जो आपने कहा कि किसी आदमी को एक ग्रुप चाहिए जो बार बार ये कहता है नो अभी तक आपने पूरा काम नहीं किया है, आपको एक काम करना पड़ेगा, certainly will be able to achieve that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shankar. Rajeev sir.
Well, I don't think any question was specifically addressed to me, but just which only shows that perhaps whatever I said was not said properly.
It was totally accepted, totally studied.
Well, I would be very happy if that was so. But just 2 points. One, Mr. Rathodi made that point on and I think many of you have made that point. Exactly. I mean, see, we don't have to announce from the rooftop what do we want to become. We must become, we must be noticed, and then we can acknowledge that yes, we have become Vishwaguru. So, but I would like to distinguish that could be a motivational or mobilizational approach. You know, please don't forget that here was, whatever this phrase was coined, this was clearly a phrase which was coined at a particular level from the perspective of motivating the people in this country, of mobilizing forces. So kindly don't, I agree with you. I agree with you that, and I said this, I said that without material progress you can't achieve anything. But the point is that this is done as a leadership statement. And that is what we should take it in stride. So that was one. I don't know exactly what was intended while asking that PLI question, but yes, see, PLI is one scheme, production linked incentive scheme, is one scheme where for the first time in the realm of economic policy, the government has taken a very determinative, very decisive step, investing 2 lakh crores in 14 sectors, entirely with the objective of making India's those sectors competitive. So there is no reason why some of them are showing good results, 2 or 3 at least. So that was that. But I don't think any other point.
Thanks, Rajeev. No, both the points you answered were very important. Amitabh, sir?
देखिए, सब्जेक्ट तो विश्वगुरु की राह पे हमारे बैचमेट रवि शंकर जी ने और पर जो जवाब हमने दिया वो हमने विकसित भारत की राह पे। तो वो हमारा एक बैचमेट था, वो यूपी कैडर का था, मैं ऐसा जेएनयू में पढ़ता था, वो बिना पढ़े आईएएस में आ गया। तो मैंने पूछा क्या किया, तो कहता है मैं तो 10 सवाल के आंसर रट के गया था, सवाल कुछ और आ गए जो मेरे पास आंसर थे। कहता सवाल अकबर पे है, मैं शाहजहां पे पढ़ के गया था, मैंने शाहजहां का नाम बदल के अकबर में सब लिख दिया और हाईएस्ट मार्क्स आए उसके। तो हमने भी रविशंकर के विश्वगुरु की राह पे, विकसित भारत की राह पे बोला। तो
सारी गलती रविशंकर साहब
नहीं, पर ये हमारे इतने प्रिय मित्र हैं कि जो निर्देश देते हैं हम वही फॉलो करते हैं। तो पहले तो जो कहा गया कि देखिए, पहले वी मस्ट अंडरस्टैंड कि दुनिया में क्या हो रहा है। There are and some very good points were made in this question. Basically, there are 3 things happening. One is the point that you made, that the period of stability post World War II, since 1945, which was led by the US in establishing international law and humanitarian law and the establishment of institutions like United Nations, Security Council, and subsequently the World Trade Organizations, that period of stability has broken completely. We must understand this clearly. We are seeing conflict at the heart of Europe for 4 years. 350,000 people have died there. We should also be very clear in our mind that the First World War was fought in Europe, the Second World War was fought in Europe, and this war is going on for over 4 years. Israel literally pulped Gaza and over 400,000 people died there. You should know in the Middle East conflict what has happened, and you're seeing conflict in Middle East, in West Asia, again, as a huge conflict going on right now. So the conflict is center stage. When Japan, Korea, China was growing, they grew in the period of stability. There was peace and prosperity. India's challenge is to grow in the moment of turmoil and turbulence. And therefore certain comments were made about how do we react to, certain issues. The larger perspective is that the challenge for India to grow in the moment of conflict is much more. We must understand and comprehend. The second is that when these countries were growing, global supply chains were working, value chains were working. And therefore you could, what Rajeev said, you could export, you could do value addition, you could re-export, and you became the cheapest producer in the world, and therefore the American, if you look at the top 20 companies, 95% of the production came in from China, and China grew at scorching pace of growth because of global value chains. You must understand this. That value chain, the ability to do global supply chains, your ability to do import and export, that has got completely disrupted. So the age of global value chains and your ability to become another China has got room. Must be clear about these two things. And therefore India needs another strategy of growth. You need to do exports, but you need many more things. That's my mind. But we should also be clear that we are sitting in this room at a point of time when the world is witnessing the biggest rise of productivity ever. We are in a moment when world, despite these conflicts, despite this breakdown of global supply chains, the world will see the biggest rise of investments and productivity the world has ever seen because of data, machine learning, and artificial intelligence. Despite all the Trumpian tariffs, American economy was not impacted because they saw over $250 billion worth of investment in artificial intelligence, and artificial intelligence will transform the lives of every single citizen. What was not physically possible earlier, improving learning outcomes came up, improving health outcomes came up, improving nutritional standards came up. These are all very slow-moving indicators. They take 4 years, 5 years, 10 years. If you're trying to transform stunting and wasting, it's a long-term process. It's an intergenerational process. A weak mother gives birth to a weak child. You have to track that mother from her point of pregnancy to the point of delivery, and that becomes intergenerational. And that you will see in tribal areas of India. But it's now possible to do all that very quickly, very fast. You can track every single person on the basis of artificial intelligence and open sourcing. That is what is happening today in the world. So what DeepMind did with Google's, it opened up research of 400 years to the scientists across the world. And therefore AI will transform the lives of every single person in the world in the next few years. And it's a challenge for India to use technology to leapfrog and do pole vaulting. This is an opportunity for India. And the more we do it, the better it is. And therefore, we missed the semiconductor bus earlier, but now not only are we designing with Micron, etc., but we are doing hardcore manufacturing for chips in India. There are 10 major companies which are manufacturing in India. And therefore my belief is that India, I'm a great optimist in India. I said not only do we have young demographics, but understand this very clearly, that no country in the world does all these fast payments, and we are doing 50% of the fast payments in the world which India does. No country in the world is making 30 kilometers of roads and 12 kilometers of railway line every day. No country in the world has grown its solar energy 32 times, 32x in 7 years. Understand this, what we have done. And to my mind, this is a moment of huge opportunity for India. Huge opportunity for India. And therefore, despite many challenges, I am a great optimist in India, and I am a great believer that this is not merely India's decade, this is India's century.
Thank you, Amitabh. Thank you so much. Anand ji, देखिए काम कर रहा है.
ये अभी सहस्त्रधारा रोड की बात उठाई, तो वैसे तो ये फोरम नहीं है, लेकिन फिर भी देखिए, गवर्नमेंट सोसाइटी का ही अंग होता है. गवर्नमेंट और गवर्नमेंट एजेंसी, ये कोई मंगल ग्रह से नहीं आया है, नंबर 1. नंबर 2, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर क्रिएट करने के लिए सिर्फ पैसे की जरूरत होती है. सिस्टम बनाने के लिए बहुत और चीजों की जरूरत होती है. सहस्त्रधारा रोड को हमने डबल किया, लेकिन आधी रोड जो नई बनी उसमें हम ही लोगों ने अपनी गाड़ियों को पार कर दिया. तो वो स्पेस हमारी खत्म हो गई, वो हम ही लोगों ने किया पार। तो हम और आप इन्फोर्समेंट 24/7/365 नहीं कर सकते हैं अगर सिटीजन्स उसको फॉलो नहीं करना चाहे। आप एक दिन इन्फोर्स कर लेंगे, 2 दिन कर लेंगे, लेकिन 365 डेज इन्फोर्स नहीं कर सकते। तो ये सोसाइटी और इंडिविजुअल सिटीजन्स की भी उतनी ही रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी होती है कि हम कितना उस सिस्टम को और कितने सिविक सेंस के साथ उसको हम इम्प्लीमेंट करें। अगर हमको 100 डेक चल के अपनी गाड़ी पार करके कहीं और करना है, लेकिन हम दुकान के सामने ही अपनी कार पार करना चाहें, तो ये हमारी जो सोसाइटी की और इंडिविजुअल की जनरल मेंटालिटी है वो हमें खत्म करना होगा। पेडेस्ट्रियन पाथवे हमने बनवाया मसूरी डाइवर्शन से लेके साईं बाबा मंदिर तक, लेकिन अब हम अपनी स्कूटर उसी पेडेस्ट्रियन वॉक पे हम पार कर देते हैं। तो ये तो हमें भी अपनी कॉमन सेंस और अपना रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी एज ए सिटीजन समझना होगा, तभी और सोसाइटी और गवर्नमेंट एजेंसी मिलके काम कर सकते हैं। हाँ, डेफिनेटली हमारी एजेंसी और हमारे गवर्नमेंट सिस्टम में भी कहीं ना कहीं शॉर्टकमिंग्स हैं, उसको हम ओवर ए पीरियड ऑफ टाइम एवरीवन ट्राइज टू इम्प्रूव दैट, और उसको इम्प्रूव करने की कोशिश भी करते हैं और उसमें इम्प्रूवमेंट भी होता है। ठीक है, तो जैसे ये सरधारा रोड की बात हुई थी इसमें। दूसरा एक आपने कहा था कि पॉलिसी इशू से विश्वगुरु, पॉलिसीज तो आपको, पॉलिसीज हम किसके लिए बनाते हैं? पॉलिसीज हम बनाते हैं अपने सिटीजन को एक अच्छी क्वालिटी ऑफ लाइफ, हैप्पी लाइफ उसके लिए देते हैं। उसमें सारे फिर डिफरेंट इश्यूज आ जाते हैं। तो डेफिनेटली पॉलिसीज अगर जब हमारे अच्छे होंगे और हमारे सिटीजन्स स्ट्रेंथन होंगे, तभी हम जाके ग्लोबल लीडर या जो बन सकते हैं वो बनेंगे। थैंक यू।
Thank you so much. Let me exercise my moderator's right for 2 minutes and then perhaps conclude. Look, it's obviously impossible to make any specific conclusions because of the very wide-ranging thoughts that have been shared by this wonderfully esteemed, experienced panelists. But 2 points I think perhaps you would probably agree come out very clearly. चाहे वो विश्व गुरु वाली बात हो या जैसे अमिताभ ने कहा विकसित भारत वाली बात हो, this is not a destination that we will suddenly arrive at. It is a path that we will have to walk, and it is not going to be a path which is going to be a smooth path. Lots of people would have parked their cars on that path, and we will have to circumvent that. Some of those challenges we might foresee, but many, like has happened in the last 15 days, we will not be able to see. Is there a path that we can follow that someone else has followed? Absolutely not. Things have changed drastically. We'll have to carve out our path, we'll have to be nimble, we'll have to be flexible. That's one probably takeaway. The second takeaway, and I think it was very clear from all that was said, was that while the country is the foremost, is the most important thing, it is the individuals which make up the country. And then unless and until it is that individual towards whom not only the country's developmental aspirations get fulfilled, but that individual's obligations to the country also get fulfilled. It's not a one-way street, but the individual, whether it is the per capita income that we talked about, whether it's otherwise, and for all of this, if I try to pick out 5 or 6 of the most important threats, again, non-exhaustive list I shared, then I think ultimately reaching the end of this journey, keeping the individual in mind, will ultimately depend on the strength of our democracy, on the very, very strong growth of our economy, on the openness of our trade regime and our ability to integrate, the vitalities, I would say, of our cities, but most importantly, it will be the confidence with which India engages the world, a confidence that at times will require silence, at times will require assertiveness. It's not going to be one-size-fits-all approach. Having said that, let me then conclude finally with 2 remarks with Ravi's permission. First is, look, if all policy conversations, public policy conversations had an audience as enlightened as you, where the number of hands practically equaled the number of people here, certainly. And secondly, if such conversations were held in a wonderful, even to us coming from Delhi, trust me, Dehradun Vasiyon, it's a lovely place to come in. And if both these things were accompanied by Ravi's absolutely immaculate planning and coordination, then certainly, even if we didn't solve problems faster, we certainly would love to continue to have such public policy discourses in places like this. So I think a big round of applause to this wonderful panel that we've had, to the organizers that we've had. And a final point, at least these batchmates of mine, I've obviously known for 46 years. And trust me, I've rarely seen them as composed, mature, forward-looking. And you know why? इन तीनों की वाइफ्स यहाँ पे हैं, उनको भी मेरा बहुत धन्यवाद. So with that, Ravi, thanks for that and over to you.
I must thank the panel for adhering to the time. So, and the moderator deserves a great round of applause. I have a pleasant duty to give mementos to this thing, for which I would request Shri Napal Charji to please come on stage and give us all memento from the Doon Library to Shri Shishir Priyadarshi. There's a very interesting tale connecting that. Shishir Priyadarshi succeeded Shri Napal Chand as District Magistrate of Badaयूं. I'll also request Shri Subhash Kumar ji to please come on stage and give it to Shri Amitabh Kant. And to Shri Rajeev Kher also. I take the pleasure of handing over the memento to both the President of IIPA Uttarakhand chapter and the President of the Doon Library and Research Center, that is the Chief Secretary. Please take a seat. On behalf of the Doon Library and Research Center, the IIPA Uttarakhand chapter, first and foremost I would like to express my thanks to the Chintan Research Foundation, the President, for having consented to partner. We like this partnership approach and I'm sure there will be many opportunities in the future. I'd like to thank Shri Amitabh Kant, Shri Rajeev Kher, Shri Shankar Agarwal for having consented to come from Delhi and partake and share your perspective. I wish to thank the Chief Secretary for having spared his time, and also he has been very supportive of both the institutions, the IIPA Uttarakhand chapter and Doon Library and Research Center. The continued support will help us to grow and perform to higher levels. The audience here, quite naturally, the audience adds what I would call gaiety, color and spirit to this whole body. Someone asked, "Ye Vishwaguru kya hota hai?" Yeah, I think it is like there was a serial some time back, about 20 years back, Bharat ek coach. ये विश्वगुरु भी एक खोज है, unravel what it is to be a Vishwaguru. So there are many speakers who have emphasized on how we can be. So my own way of looking at this is, हम लोग विश्वगुरु थे, हम विश्वगुरु बन सकते हैं. बीच में there is what I would call a brief interlude in time. So we have to overcome whatever the handicaps in the way in which we are functioning and move on. हम होंगे कामयाब. धन्यवाद आप सबको.
थैंक यू सर. और इस आज के मंचासीन सभी अतिथियों से निवेदन है और इस सभागार में भी उपस्थित सभी सम्रांत जनों से निवेदन है, कृपया जलपान करके ही प्रस्थान करें. धन्यवाद.